to begin.
Hey, what is up, guys, and welcome back to another episode of a Social Private Podcast. You're listening to us live on KQBH LP, Los Angeles, California, 101.5 FM, a community service of the Boyle Heights Arts Conservatory, broadcasting live on your FM dial and streaming on kqbhla.com. This is your host, Eddie Aguirre, and my guest today is the amazing Mariah Castañeda.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Dude, thank you so much for making the time to come out here. You are the co-founder, audience director of L.A Public Press, and you're the host for The Sellout.
Yeah, that's me.
Well, Mariah, well, thank you again so much for making the time to come out here. I've been fascinated for the work that you've been doing. I feel like it's spoken volumes of what you are capable of doing when you focus on the community that kind of brought you up. Mm-hmm. And I think it's a powerful thing when you really acknowledge that we haven't had this type of representation for a long time. And when they really think about it, it's empowering, I think, to everybody who's listening to this, that there's people that care enough to be able to make the new change that we want. Again, I am grateful for your work, and I really want to know more about how you got started in all of this.
Oh my God, you're going to make me cry. I'm so in happy tears though, because sometimes I'm in the work and I feel so grateful to have so many people in my life that have guided me, helped me. It's really, I really appreciate you saying all the work that I do, but honestly, it's really everybody around me who's guided me, who's loved me, put care into me. I know my best friend is listening to this podcast right now, Maddie, and she's helped me so much in my journey. I've been a journalist for 10 years and she's one of my first supporters, my friend Zaina too. And my community back home in Huntington Park, my communities everywhere I'm from, I feel like everybody has really guided me and helped me. And every time I ask for help, how can this be better? How can this be something that you want? Everybody's always gifted me their opinions, their ideas. So I feel very blessed. It is not just me. It's everyone I come with.
That's beautiful, because I think we're all putting our 2 cents into all of this, and slowly we're making the change that we've been wanting. I mentioned to you that I've been a resident of the Southeast LA area since '98, on and off, but I've been able to see the changes that the community has gone through over the last couple of decades, and it always hasn't been the best thing. But the one thing that stays consistent is the people, and the people who make this place what it is, And I think for a long time it was, in a sense, you can say that it's been abused, either through environmental racism, through underrepresentation. I think it's awesome that it's our time now, to kind of bring this together. And that's some of the work that you've been kind of highlighting through most of your projects, either whether it's the Boyle Heights area, Southeast LA. These platforms are starting to focus on the important parts that we really want to hear, right? Because I think one thing that people don't really understand is that sometimes our areas are news deserts, and there's not a real outlet that we can go into and try to get the information that we need for what's affecting our communities.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. I'm thinking about the big Bell corruption scandal that happened 10 years ago, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm thinking about when that came out, I was like, oh my God. And then when I started to think about it critically and learn more about it during my journalism classes in high school, or not high school, in college, mm-hmm. I remember thinking wait a minute, this whole thing's been brewing for a very long time. Yeah. And then once no shade to the LA Times, but once the LA Times decided, they were like, oh, this looks kind of off. Let's go hop in. Uh-huh. And then we're going to get a Pulitzer. And I'm like, well, I think it's really great that you reported on it. And I think it's great that y'all got a Pulitzer. But why let it get to that level? Yeah. And to your point about a news desert, I think corruption really thrives where there's no folks reporting on it, where there aren't reporters that are there, actively at every city council meeting there all the time. Now, at L.A. Public Press, we don't have the resources to do that all the time yet. My dream is to get there, right? But yeah, I hope I'm answering your question, or I don't know what your question was, but if you can repeat it.
No, you're more than okay. I mean, I really just want to be able to get an idea of what led you down this path of taking control of that narrative.
Yeah, so I think there's 2 things. I mean, I have my typical stump speech, but for this, I want to not just give you that. So, and I don't want to, I kind of give a stump speech sometimes because I don't want to actually feel the emotions that I feel when I get into it. Mm-hmm. But I went to high school, Huntington Park High School, for most of my time there. And I was in the cross country team, I was on the track team, and we would run miles and miles down Slauson and down Randolph. Mm-hmm. So we'd run through Vernon. Now, when I say we ran through Vernon, we actually ran into like one of the most toxic parts of LA County, or one of the most toxic parts of California, which is, where the Exide Battery Recycling Center, now it's closed, but back then it wasn't. Back then it was like an actual active battery recycling center, and it was tossing out tons of lead into the local community. And we were all running into the radius of it. And we had no idea. And I'm pretty sure our coaches didn't know. I'm pretty sure none of the teachers knew. I mean, we knew it wasn't the best place to be running around in, but we didn't know that there was like actively lead.
Right.
So I really, when I was in college, I think I was watching a lecture or something. I think I was at a lecture or something, and then they talk about Exide. They talk about the battery recycling center. And I'm like, hey, wait, I'm from there. Oh man, is there lead in me?
Mm-hmm.
And I remember thinking like, wow, I wish they would have reached out to us. I wish they would have like informed not just had it in the news where people in the LA Times are reading it, or people that have access to news can read it. Because I do know there was some reporting on it at the time, but it wasn't like alert, I wish there was like a community alert. Here's ways you can stay safe.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there is that now, but it's because of community groups like East Yard, like other like community members that actually help inform people, that have created this like amazing apparatus of like people who also grew up during that time, who went on to become professors, become researchers from Southeast LA, from Boyle Heights, that are not just, telling people how to stay safe, but also like telling people how to get their stuff tested, testing it themselves, holding the state accountable. So I think we all play our part. So I was like, okay, what if the news came to your house? What if the news was like, came to your school? What if the news was like, hey, here's what's happening. Also, it impacts you, FYI. Yeah. And BTW, these are the people in your neighborhood that, are also, organizing against it or doing something. Here's how you can stay safe. So that was one reason. And I was really inspired by my friends that were like involved in environmental organizing, because the Department of Health would send out stuff to people in the radius, and sometimes they'd send it out in one language but not another language.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm also a pocha, like my Spanish is not the best. So like I think one time there was like they were sending it only in like Spanish, and then I think there was one neighbor who didn't speak really Spanish very well, and her name was Juanita. And my friends are like, oh no, like she doesn't speak Spanish very well. We have to go translate this for her. So they went over to her house and they made sure that it was translated. And I'm sure it went vice versa too. If everything was only in English, they would also like translate it, I think. Mm-hmm. So I was thinking like, wow, what if like news operated like neighbors? Like making sure that you're good and you're taken care of.
Yeah.
The other thing was that Huntington Park is a very like immigrant heavy community. So I'd be watching the news, and then they just like straight up say like really dehumanizing, horrible things about immigrants on like the news. And I was like, these are my friends. These are like, it's my grandpa. These are my grandparents. Like, this is my uncle. How are you going to be talking about people in my community like this? So I was pretty naive. I was like a kid. So I was like, I'm going to go be a journalist so that way I can teach them to not be so ignorant. Obviously, that's not how things work. But that's what I thought.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's a great way to start. I think that's how most of our ideas start, thinking that they're pretty straightforward and we can make change the moment we get into the field, It's interesting because I didn't really find out about what was going on with Maywood until maybe my early 20s. It's when I had my first son. And by the time he was 3 years old, 4 years old, this is when I guess the news became like a community thing where most people knew, because they were sending letters out to have people tested or test their blood for lead. And my 4-year-old or 4 years old, I think they got a letter from school like, hey, he has to get checked for lead.
Oh my God.
As a parent, I was like, what? Like, I had no idea about this. And I think because one, the information wasn't really available for a lot of people then. And then second, at that time, I wasn't really involved in how I am now in terms of community and what's kind of happening, It's something I grew into. So when these moments started happening to me, it was reality shaking me up. Like, look, you got to focus on where you're raising, first and foremost, your kid, at least for me again. And I didn't really give much thought about it for myself until much later when I started finding out that Maywood also has parks that are the soil was just bad all over. Cudahy had soil as well that was bad. And that kind of started getting me active in trying to figure out, why is this being allowed and what are we going to do about it? It's really frustrating, and you feel really powerless when you don't know where to begin. And I'm talking as somebody who, was born here, who has that privilege to go and use my voice for this, and other people who don't, like, what are they doing? They're just sitting ducks, and they're allowing this to continue to happen. And I don't think that was fair at all. So, again, those are the moments that kind of catapulted me into becoming more open-minded about what's going on in my neighborhood. And, slowly but surely, it allowed me to kind of start having conversations about this. So when I started seeing your work, and then I started seeing you get involved with L.A Public Press and their focus initially with Southeast LA, I was like, dude, this is what we need. For the people, from the people, by the people. That's the sentence.
Yes, for LA people, by LA people.
Now tell me a little bit, like, how did you get into the idea of becoming involved with L.A Public Press?
Oh, man. Yeah, well, before I begin, we do have a focus on Southeast LA. We will always report on Exide and the cleanup. That is one of our focus areas. So we do pretty consistent reporting on that because it's so crazy. Something that I thought about 15 years ago. Yeah. It's like here, not 100% the way, like, we're not going door to door yet, but I'm so happy we have consistent coverage, and I'm so happy we can provide that for our folks. Anyways, yeah, so it's really funny. It started on Twitter. Well, when it was still Twitter, not X. Matthew Tinoco, our publisher and founder, he tweeted something, and he was like, what did he say? Something like, hey, I'm building a newsroom. And I was like, cool. I helped LA Taco become a newsroom, like help them transform from a blog to a newsroom. And I was like, okay, I have no idea who this guy is. I just know a little bit about him. I was like, oh, I'm just going to have lunch with him, give him some pointers on how to build a newsroom. If he needs any help, I'm not even sure if I can really help him that much. And then he was like, hey, you want to work on this with me? And I was like, sure, why not? So I quit my job and I started working on, it didn't even have a name yet. I was so scared. I was like, okay, you know what? I trust you, Mr. Man I just met a month ago. And also he's from the Valley. So it's like we got our founder and publishers from the Valley, and our co-founder, me, is from Southeast LA. So it was always like, all right, you want me to build the audience? It's going to be very Southeast LA. It's going to be very Southeast LA, East LA, and South LA. We can get to the Valley eventually. And the Valley is super important. I think our communities have so much in common. It's another overlooked community. It's another community that really struggles with environmental justice issues. And I have a lot of respect for the work that's going on in the Valley. But I wanted to start with where I knew. I didn't want to parachute into any communities before. I need to start what I knew. I need to start with my friends. I need to start with all the organizations that I knew and people that had already trusted me.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's important because that's like, you can't just walk into some place that you have nothing to offer yet, and you're like, I need you to give me information. It's like that's not how it works. You got to build the trust. People can't just come in and open and be vulnerable with you immediately. What has been like the biggest differences that you've seen working with L.A. Public Press and any like bigger news outlets, like in terms of the approach to the community?
Oh man, well, I mean, again, I'm getting emotional, but we made a promise that we were going to try to hire within Southeast LA. So we have 2 reporters that are from Southeast LA. Amanda, who I actually went to high school with.
You went to high school with her?
I went to high school with her.
Okay, nice.
We were on the same track team and cross-country team, I believe. And, then she became a journalist. She was at CBS. And I really liked her work. I really liked all the community work that she used to actually have a show here. And outside of being a journalist at CBS and outside of like working there, she did like teaching classes for incarcerated youth. Like, wow, like what a great person. And then we had Ashley Arona, who is from South LA, Florence Graham area. And she was a journalist. She had also been trained at USC, but she was also a community organizer. And she also worked in environmental justice work. And I was like, I want someone like that here. I want someone who knows how government works, and I want someone who also has a little bit of that organizer background. So what makes us different, I'd say, is that I feel I don't want to be feeling like I'm like throwing shade at other newsrooms, and I think they have changed for sure. But when I was coming up, it was definitely like, you have to pay your dues. If you want to report in LA, you have to go to the Midwest first. You have to go to Bakersfield first. You have to go to a smaller market first, and then you come back. It's a privilege to work in LA. And I didn't think that was right because, I mean, yeah, I do think it's a privilege to work in LA, but I do think that privilege should be for people who are from here, who have a vested interest in here, who know our communities deeply, who our communities trust, because that's what they deserve. Like, I love our LA people so much, and I think that we deserve reporters that understand us, that get us, that love us, right? So I think we try to hire folks that are from our communities, and if they're not, have a deeply invested in our communities. So we do have 2 East Coasters, but they are both involved in organizing. They're both like really plugged into our communities, and I feel like they've really demonstrated a true love for LA people. And, just like there's kind of a humility to them.
Yeah.
So yeah.
How do you think that's made you grow as an individual, just being basically in front of all of this, reacting and developing with the community? Like, how has that made you grow as a person?
Oh man, I kind of wish I was able to be out there a little bit more instead of kind of like guiding things, if I'm being honest. But it does feel kind of like, it feels like a pressure to me. It does feel like pressure, because it's like, okay, what's the direction we're gonna go? Okay, what does our audience need? Okay, what are they saying they need? Am I getting enough information? Am I asking the right people? Okay, we surveyed. Is that survey from this era? From last year, are those numbers still accurate? Okay, what they're saying on social media, that's great. I know that the people that are commenting and talking to us and, whatever, I know that they're from these zip codes. In their bios, they say that they're from these different communities, in these different neighborhoods. Is there anyone who's left out? So I'm constantly thinking, like, who's left out? And I think being an audience person, you kind of have to like learn to take feedback. So sometimes people don't like certain things, and as an audience person, you can't get defensive, even if that's like even if that's like your how we all are. I think a lot of us can be defensive. Like for me, I'm like, what do you mean that story wasn't perfect? I think it's perfect. But you kind of learn to step back and be like, okay, how can we improve this? You know what? I'm grateful. They're giving us feedback for free. And we're not paying them to be nice. And most of the time, our audience is pretty nice. They like to be helpful. It's so cute. Our audience loves to be helpful. If we post something that they think is relevant, they share it. They will spread it really far and wide. If they share anything, I'm totally getting on a tangent. My bad.
No, you're good. No. I mean, this is what's beautiful about just platforms like this that can help. Again, bring a voice to the community, because a lot of the times you're completely removed from all this stuff. Like the best I can do, if I go to an LA Times article or New York Times, it's like I can comment, but there's no direct feedback with the person that I'm talking to. There's no open conversation or discussion that is there for me to give anything. Like I'm just a consumer, and that's what they see us as a consumer. In this case, from my understanding, at least from what I'm getting out of this, is that you're allowing yourself to listen. And that's one thing that a lot of us don't do nowadays. We just want to talk, rant and just give our point across, but we never take the time to just stay quiet, listen, whether it goes with our values or not. Like, it's important to be able to have the discussion where we're allowed to have different perspectives coming at us, because if I give you my opinion on this, through this podcast, I've been able, and I mentioned it before, I've been able to grow as an individual. I can listen to conversations from years ago and listen to them now, and I'm just like, oh, damn, there's natural growth there, But again, that's only because I allowed myself to get feedback, listen to people, talk to people, and really get to know their needs, whether they match with what mine are, So I think that's one of the cool things that, at least for yourself, you're allowing that, It's challenging what you think as well. That's the best thing you could do.
100%. Now, that's just feedback that we get, from our readers. But we surveyed 800 people throughout LA County to kind of see what they wanted from us.
And what did that look like? How are you surveying that?
Oh, man. So it was myself and Amanda. Amanda took on a lot of that work, though. And another woman named Yvonne. So we surveyed. We were at night markets. We were at the YMCA in Maywood.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I know that spot.
Yeah. We were at a punk show. We were at parties. We were at farmers markets. Wherever the people were, we would definitely try to be at. And then we'd also pass out these cute little like cartoon pens that people loved. We were like shocked that people liked them so much. We were at Little League games. Yeah, when parents are just waiting for their kids to get out of Little League games, we were there. I feel like I'm missing a bunch of things. Oh, comedy nights, like all kinds of random stuff.
Okay. And it's just reaching out to them, like trying to figure out what's important to them and then kind of tallying it, or?
Yeah, so I had like a pre-survey, which I was like, okay, what are the top issues? And I got 200 responses. I made like another survey based on that, which is like a checklist. We had environmental, we had community issues, we had all kinds of things. So I think housing, 94% of our audience, the people we surveyed, said they cared about housing in some way. Then I think like pollution, specifically, I think air quality and soil quality was super important in Southeast LA, but everyone cared about the environment. Public transit was important. I'm trying to remember what else. Can't remember anything else on the top of my head. People were really concerned about issues that impact the Latino community, local businesses, all kinds of stuff.
And how long has it been now since you started with L.A. Public Press? Like 2 years? 2023, I think, is when you guys, I guess, launched? Is that?
So we launched 2023 in January. So we've been around for like a little bit over a year and a half, maybe a year and 7 or 8 months. But I started in 2022 in July.
Oh, dang. Okay, yeah. So, no, I mean, you guys have started growing, into your own individual powerhouse, I would say, because when you think about the legacy media outlets, right, the ones that have been here for a long time, it's kind of hard to imagine that there was going to be this new outlet coming out and just kind of taking it upon themselves to really inform the people, and in a personalized way, because again, these media outlets, a lot of the time, at least I'm speaking from an outsider here, not as a journalist, just as an audience member. Like, one of the things that bothers me, sometimes you want to get basic information and there's a paywall. Like, why is there a paywall for information that's from what we think is important? I get people need to have a means of support and just to be able to fund these platforms, but at the same time, it's like, how do you expect people to want to get educated when you're putting restrictions in the way they access this news?
No, I feel that 100%. One of the things I love saying, like, L.A. Public Press, we're a public press, so it's free. We're not a private press. And I love, like, anytime we're passing out, like, our zines or passing out stuff, they're like, oh, how much does this cost? Like, it's free because we're a public press. And I really view us, and I want to expand. I really do. Like, I want, like, there's so much more I want to do. I want us to be bigger than the LA Times. Yeah. And I want us to have community reporters at every corner. That's my dream. I want us to be able to pass out information to your house if you need it, like, and like, leaving it or like mailing out, whatever. I want it to be really easy to get information. Because I view information and news as a public utility. I use it as infrastructure. It's just as important as the bridges that we have here. Like, you're not, I mean, yeah, I guess with taxes kind of, but like, you're not paying a fee every time you cross a bridge here in LA. So that's what I believe. And it's also like, I think about like how like healthy food can be kind of expensive, and then like junk food is like free. I kind of view the same with information. Like, why is it that quality information is free, is expensive? It's behind a paywall, but like misinformation, like the junk stuff, like that's free and it's like everywhere and it's really poisoning our communities. So I want us to be here. I want us to be a resource, and I want us to be for all the folks. And I want people to feel like they can change it a little bit. They can shape it. They can, like it's theirs. So it's like the community center for all of LA. That's the dream.
You just brought something up right now about poisoning the community. This is kind of related to it, but I was walking the other day through Southgate. I went to go get my car fixed. Walked back, and then I was walking back. I'm passing through these neighborhoods, right? It's just Cudahy for the most part. For people who don't know, part of it is very like industrial. Like at some point, there's just factories and railroads and all this stuff. And there's also a lot of liquor stores. And as I was walking, I saw this sign that says, "The coldest beer in town, the best prices in Cudahy," or I think in the neighborhood. And it says a tall can of like a King Cobra is like $1.50. And I'm like, okay, cool. Whoever likes beers, they get a deal here. But who are the people being targeted? It's people who are already under this vice, and people who have no other outlet but to just go and drink. And I was like, this is wrong in all aspects. because it's in the community that's already underrepresented. It's low income. A lot of the times the majority of people there are immigrants. They don't have too many options. But the option that is available there is some cheap beer, so you can let your problems go away. And that to me was very upsetting, especially in the times that we're heading over for the next couple of years. You know, we have Trump coming in again. But if that's the case, like, how can we activate the people? I'm more concerned about activating the people than giving people just the means of just numbing their pain. So that's where I'm at right now. So I'm just trying to figure out, like, how can we activate more people like yourself, people who are in your shoes, bring them back home and make those internal changes, those deep changes.
Yeah, you know what? Okay, there's me as a person, and then there's me, like, I'm working at L.A Public Press. So I'm going to start with the L.A Public Press part. L.A Public Press, now I can't speak to what we're working on right now, but we're seeing this, and we had a beautiful conversation today. And we're really talking about, okay, what are the needs our community has? And I feel like I've been hammering it a lot. And I feel like and I could be wrong. I think I might change it later. But right now, the drumbeat for me is basic needs. The basic needs, we need housing. We need food, shelter, food, and friends for all. We need a place to belong. We need belonging, right? Yeah. So I was thinking, like, okay, is the vibe now? Is it housing, food, and friends for everybody? Is that the vibe? And now me as a person, I think, I feel like there's a sense that, you know, where we're at right now, it's not sustainable. People are tired. People are working hard. So it's really easy. And you have, like, these liquor stores that are like, hey, you can get a beer for $1.50. That sounds
cheaper than the food at a fast food restaurant too, which is not as good either, you know, but you're still, alcohol is cheaper than what you can get at a store, like a fruit, you know, like a nice salad or something. It's like, why is that? That to me is what it's like, why? Why?
Exactly. I agree. So I can't change the food prices, but it's also like, how can we work? I'm also thinking, like, how can we help people find places? Like, how can we help people find places to go, you know, eat in community people? There's a lot of free food out there. I'm thinking about people that, you know, bring communities together. Like, I loved what Latino Muslim Unity was doing, where they were having free halal tacos at mosques for everybody. So people who weren't Muslim can go, and people that were breaking their fast, you know, obviously are going to have the free tacos. It was a way to build community. So I think, like, how are we encouraging these spaces? How are we uplifting them? How are we helping them? How are we letting people know where they're at? How are we also creating a space where people can feel comfortable to start engaging with these community spaces around them? So, like, for me, I get a little sad. I go to the El Serrano Greengrocer. Like, it's a little corner market down the street from me, and I go. I'll, like, go buy something, and then I'll just, like, end up talking to the people that work there. We end up chatting, and they tell me things. I tell them stuff. I'm always checking out the new vendors there. Like, how can we support different community spaces like that? Like, I know that Southeast LA is famous for having vendor markets, night markets. I know that sometimes they get shut down, which is unfortunate, but I think those places need to be, like, supported and promoted and considered, like, I don't know, a public health thing. There's a loneliness epidemic we have here. How can we, you know, as a news outlet, how can we as creators, how can we as people, like, ask our elected officials to maybe, you know, how are we going to handle this loneliness epidemic? Are you going to start letting us have, like, night markets more? Are you going to have places for us to congregate, hang out, make friends? We don't have a lot of third spaces anymore. Where are these third spaces, and who are the people making them? But also, how are we supporting them so we can all, like, you know, try to make more friends, be in community, be connected? Because I think a lot of this disconnect and this fear, I think that's what's causing people to start making political decisions and vote out of fear and vote in a way that's kind of selfish.
Yeah, exactly. And, you know, I want to give a shout out to I'll Leave You Open Mic, which is where I saw you a couple nights ago. Because, again, just being there, at least for myself, again, I'm from Sela, so just being in that space, in a space that we don't have anywhere else in Southeast LA. Outside, I mean, I know there's art space. I know Crucitas has had events there too that bring people together. But outside of that, like, we've had to create it on our own, on a backyard. Eric had to create that in his garage, you know, to be able to bring people who have been having this craving, this need to express themselves, or just be able to have other people in that same world be there, you know. And I think that was a great taste of what it could be if we all really come together, you know. That's just in one spot. And then we're already sprinkled across Southeast LA, Northeast, wherever we're coming from. We're sprinkled across the county. But when we come together in one space, we see how many of us are like-minded. And I think that's the thing that, you know, I try to focus on, is like, how can we continue bringing these people together to create a sense of family, of friendship, of connection? You know, because again, like you mentioned about the loneliness epidemic, that's true. And what happens when you're lonely and you're by yourself? The dark thoughts start coming in, that, you know, you start getting ideas. I've been in those positions where, you know, you close your eyes and you just have a million thoughts being blasted on your head about what ifs or stuff like that, because you don't have anybody to go to, you know? And I think that's one of the key things that you mentioned, that it should be a focus, and it's a focus that I feel like you guys are doing a great job in.
We're doing our best, and you know, I have ideas for next year. I'm so excited. I can't share them yet, but I'm so excited for what I have planned. I think, not speaking as L.A Public Press at all, because we are a 501c3 nonpartisan, but for me as Mariah, you know, and I'm a woman, I'm Latina, obviously Trump getting elected is not a good thing. And obviously a lot of people are very scared, and rightfully so. But I think the answer to a lot of these things is, you know, I've been seeing people organize, seeing people get together. I think we can't just be hiding away in our rooms, terrified. We have to get together. We have to be there for one another. Like, I'm thinking about the last time I got COVID, I felt so blessed because I looked outside my door. My homegirl had mailed me some COVID tests. My other homie had brought me food. My other homegirl had gave me like little immunity shots. And I think that's what we need to do during this time. Like, we need to be there for one another. We need to, like, you know, love one another and like show up for each other. I think that's what I mean to say. Not to be like all like woo woo, you know, but like, I do think we need to show community care, and we really need to show up for each other. We can't just dispose of people. I think that's kind of, you know, we can't just dispose of people just because we don't like the way they think. You know, unfortunately, they're in our communities, so we kind of do have to reach out to them in some way. And I think a part of that is, you know, what I've been hammering, you know, shelter, food, and friends. Not if somebody's, you know, obviously denying your own humanity at all, but I think we need to start, you know, just trying to address the loneliness epidemic here. I felt like I had another thought, but I completely forgot it right now.
That's okay. Do you have any like specific experiences outside of being in cross country, you know, when you were running by the Exide, that affected you in the career choice that you made as you got, you know, when you were young?
Well, it's really funny because I used to want to be a doctor. I went to school. I was getting my degree in biology. And
it's okay.
I didn't stay in biology. And you know what? I don't know why I thought I could do that, because I really don't like blood. But I was like, you know what? What if we could like change health outcomes with like narratives? If we report, you know, about inequalities, we report on whatever, maybe we could do something about some of the inequalities that we face in this country. Now, I've really changed since then. I'm definitely not like trying to be all doom and gloom all the time. Like, and I think for every problem that you highlight, you should also try to highlight the folks that are doing something good. A specific experience, though, I don't know. There's a lot. I mean, I used to live in the desert with my grandpa in Adelanto when I was like a little kid. And all the way up there, we used to get the L.A. Times. So there, with all the Joshua trees and everything, and the beautiful sunsets.
Ooh, I can imagine those. Yeah.
Yeah, we had more Joshua trees over there than Joshua Tree National Park. Let me tell you. And we have a really thriving Mexican community there. So every day, every Sunday, my grandpa would have me read the newspaper to him. He'd be like, oh, mija, you know, my English isn't that great, so you should just read this to me. He was totally just trying to get me to be helpful and read to him so I can work on reading. But I did that. And for me, I think that's probably the reason why I became a journalist, because I was like, wow, I love information. I can go figure out what's happening down the hill.
Yeah, no, that's huge. I think once you know, I remember when I was a little kid, it's just random info here, but when I remember when I first started learning how to read, and I was just like, what? I started reading everything, you know, like, oh, this, you know, whatever it was. But it was just one of those things that I'm grateful that I remember. But powerful that, you know, you were at a young age put in the position, whether you wanted to or not, just to be able to read and inform yourself. I don't know how much of that you understood at that time, but regardless, you know, you were doing a service to yourself that you didn't know it was going to affect you until much later in life, you know. But with that being said, where did you make the change from the doctor into journalism?
Well, when I was in Irvine, I was around a lot of folks that didn't have a background like me. Like the idea of like not having your basic needs met was really foreign to a lot of students. And of course, there's a lot of housing insecurity and food insecurity. But in our journalism program, you know, a lot of really great folks. But I felt kind of out of place. Like it felt like, you know, a lot of folks had come from different backgrounds than me. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's great. I love that for them. But I felt like, wow, there's a whole world of people who have no idea these things that I've seen. They have no ideas about like the fact that we're learning about, you know, lead and stuff like that and Exide. Like that's not where they come from. Yeah. So I was like, cool, we should probably inform them too, so everyone can make better decisions when they vote. But yeah, I think one day my exact major was human biology. So you had to do biology and then a bunch of humanities classes too, because they wanted to create doctors that like weren't robots or something. Yeah. So I was in a humanities class. We were in the journalism unit. I was like, wow, I love this. And I had to go talk to a veteran. And then I was like, this is interesting. And then learning about oral histories of folks who were like refugees, learning about histories from people in Latin America, like Argentina, during the Argentine Dirty War. I was like, wow, it's so important to maintain this history. All these histories are so important. And I just really thought about like the power of narrative. And like, it's crazy because narrative can impact public opinion, which can then impact policy, which is really wild to me. So all these news outlets, you know, like Fox News, you know, CBS, LA Times, they actually have a really big responsibility because the narratives that they put out there impact the people. Like they impact public opinion, which can also change how people are treated and also change public policy. So I was like, wow, I kind of want to do this. Also, I really hate biochemistry. I don't want to do biochemistry right now. So I switched. It was a tough switch, but I'm really happy I made it. And I just kind of fell in love with it like right away. Was I amazing at it right away? Absolutely not. But I loved it. I was like, wow, I can just go talk to people and like learn all kinds of random stuff. I can talk to unhoused people. So I went to Santa Ana Riverbed one time and I was hanging out with unhoused communities, and they were so cool to me. They were really nice. They assigned me a guide who was also a community member in the riverbed. That's crazy. Yeah. And it was like I got to experience their community. And I got to understand the unhoused community a little bit better in Orange County when I was at UC Irvine. And I reported on that when I was a little intern at the Voice of Orange County during my time at UC Irvine. And, you know, I was able to go to Tijuana to go talk to Haitians at the border. I got to go talk to Central American refugees too. Crazy. Yeah. So just like, crazy. Yeah. And for me, I was just like, really like, wow, I'm kind of a curious person. So I was like, if I felt like if something was happening, I would want to go just to go witness it myself so I could experience it without any of the spin, any of like maybe lenses that other newsrooms are using. I love how you put all that, because again, you took it upon yourself to continue putting yourself in positions so you can keep learning and keep understanding people, you know. And going back to my whole point about, you know, the whole lonely thing and not giving ourselves a space to have conversation, it blocks so many things from our view, you know. And very much so, like yourself, you've been able to continuously stay consistent with the exposure you give yourself, and it's making you a better person. It's growing. You're growing into a well-rounded person, you know. And I think you're the perfect person to be audience director at L.A Public Press, because it shows that you're there again for the people, and that's powerful, you know. Like, thank you for your work on that. Thank you so much, Eddie. Yeah, I mean, I never step back and think about it, so I really do appreciate that. I get kind of shy hearing praise, but like, it does mean a lot to me.
Yeah, no, of course. I just it should be that, when we take it upon ourselves to just create and build, I think it's it's nice hearing it from people. I had somebody on Saturday, I'll leave you open mic. I show up. I'm a little shy too. I don't go to places. I'm like, hey, I'm this guy. Hey, I'm more like, I'm just here. And then somebody recognized me. They're like, hey, you do the podcast, and I was like, oh yeah. And then you started, going down the list of the things that they feel that I'm doing right, quote right. And it took me by surprise. Like, oh, like, dang, I'm just here sitting in a room with somebody talking about ideas and concepts and change, and then somebody here is picking it up and taking it further. Like, I mentioned this in the last episode. I feel like sometimes we're just vessels or antennas to keep providing this information, and then we keep affecting people whether we know it or not. Based on the work that we're putting out. Very much like L.A. Public Press. During the whole election stuff, you guys were bringing out guides, voter guides, just to kind of break things down. And I think that's important. I saw a lot of different outlets, including Jimmy. He did his own episode on that from Jimbo Times, or JT the LA Storyteller, as he calls it. But just stuff like that. And I had an interesting experience because the day of the election, on the Tuesday, I went to vote. I was talking to some people outside, and then this señora, like this viejita, like on a wheelchair, she's just waiting. I don't even know her. She's just waiting there for me. She was like, oye, muchacho. And I was like, oh, yeah? Where are you going? And this day I was walking everywhere. Mm-hmm. And she was like, can you help me? Can you push me down the street? And I was like, yeah, sure. So I'm there just pushing a random señora, like viejita in her wheelchair. And she's just telling me these stories about why she's voting, like why she voted the way she did. Like there was things that she didn't understand on the ballot. And I'm just thinking like, dang, where can she go to get information about these measures? We're talking about Cudahy right now, so there was even measures that I wasn't even completely aware of. I'm like in front of the screen voting, and I'm just like, what? I pull out my phone just to do a quick search, and I'm like, why didn't I really hear about this? And that's me, somebody who has the capabilities to go online and search things up. But other people, like, they don't have a clue. They're just going in there thinking they're doing their duty for voting, but are they really aware of what they're doing? And I got this taste from that off of this señora while she was talking to me about this stuff, and it just gave me a small view into what I think will be a bigger picture in Southeast LA, of how people consume news to inform themselves.
No, 100%. Like, I really want us to get to the point to where we're able to get all those different measures for the locals, for the little cities, for the smaller cities. They're really important. It's really hard even for us to break down at that level. I mean, we have such a small staff, but I want to get to that. I hope we can build up to that by next election cycle. What we were able to do this time around was we were able to do a breakdown of Measure G. So we put that in different community centers. I think a hospital in Southeast LA, South LA. We try to focus it on there. So those are the people that are most impacted by Measure G for the most part. There's a lot. We try to focus on unincorporated communities. But exactly like that. That's why I'm doing what I do, and that's what I want to accomplish, because it is really tricky. It is really hard. And I think like it's difficult because they give you these mailers, right? You get a little information, you read it, but then it's like Prop 34. Like that was basically something to make sure that rent control is never on your ballot again, at least not if the AIDS Healthcare Foundation is funding it or, helping it get on the ballot, which, but when you read it, it doesn't look like that. It looks like it's all about healthcare. And even the little description they give you, that's what it makes it look like.
Exactly.
So,
yeah. I see exactly what you're saying.
So it is my dream to kind of make sure that we can get all those measures. We can get all those very specific details to every specific city in Southeast LA. I wanted to do it for all communities in LA County. That would be great. So we can serve all 10 million of us. Yeah.
It starts with your neighbors, though. That's how we can definitely take that on. Now, when it comes down to the intergenerational aspect of things, we have different audiences everywhere. We have the youth, we have the regular people like us, and then we have the elders. And obviously we all have different ways of consuming media, as time goes by, social media, newspapers, print, whatever it is. But I feel like the biggest disconnect, and like, again, I'm just a little naive on all this, so I'm just assuming at this point. But to me, the biggest disconnect is that sometimes the information that we're trying to consume, it's not necessarily presented to fit those audiences, that it's easy for you to be like, this doesn't even relate to me. Like, this is for older people, whatever it is, But there's these conversations that I've had, at least with my family members, that range in different ages as well, where we're able to kind of find the middle ground in terms of what we really want, in terms of change, communal change. And I think it's important to be able to find that ground when it comes down to the way we digest information. And it's going to be, I don't know, do you have any idea of how we can, close that gap in terms of the information?
Yeah, so not to answer your question with a question, but kind of like, what is the change that you want? What's the ultimate goal? Mm-hmm. What is the goal that you're thinking of?
Myself?
Yes.
I'm thinking of being able to activate people to the point where you get curious enough to consume the information and try to apply it either on a personal level or bring it out to your community.
But to mobilize people, what's the point of mobilizing people? What do you want to mobilize them to do?
I think my biggest thing would just be education. I just want people to be able to critically think based on the information that they're getting.
Got it. Well, not everybody wants to go to church. That's the thing. Mm-hmm. And that's what I've learned the hard way. So when I first wanted to be a journalist, I actually had a completely different frame of mind. Mm-hmm. I wanted to work for The Hill. You know that? Yeah, I wanted to work for The Hill and the Washington Post. That was my dream. Uh-huh. I was 18 years old. I'm like, I'm going to leave LA and I'm going to work in DC and I am going to work at The Hill and report on national politics. Yeah. Which, why would I ever want to do that? That's absolutely not who I am now, 10 years later. But I was told that was like the pinnacle of journalist, right? Yeah. And I, being an overachiever, I'm like, yeah, I want to be the best of the best. And if that's where the best is, that's where I want to be. I promise I'm getting to my point in a second.
Okay.
But I ended up working with Voto Latino, and my boss there, he came from BuzzFeed. He used to work for Beto Like. He was one of the co-founders there. And he was like, we have to make information fun. And then at the same time, I was also working for L.A. Taco, and they kind of have a similar ethos. They're like, no, we have to make things fun and relatable, and we have to make things for L.A. people. It can't just be like all this serious stuff. You have to make it so that way it's also entertaining. And I was like, no, we can have all the entertaining stuff later once we educate everybody. Yeah. But I think it kind of goes back to my point earlier when I was saying, like, food, shelter, and friends. Mm-hmm. People are tired. People, they work long hours. I think it's like you have to give people information, and people need to have information and something else. So at least in social media, there's a formula. Are you informing? And is it informative in a way that people want to share it so they can feel helpful or look smart or something? Mm-hmm. And is it entertaining? If you can get 2 of the 3, great. You got a viral moment, a semi-viral moment. If you got 3 out of 3, might be kind of viral. Amazing. We love it. And I think the same applies for information in person and as a whole in general. If not everybody's gonna, time is very limited. So not everybody's gonna want to spend time learning something or listening to something. Yeah. But if you give them some kind of other incentive, maybe the incentive is that they can go hang out and get free food and make new friends. They can socialize. People are starved right now of social interaction. They want that. I learned from another newsroom in Kentucky, actually, that they actually get a ton of people coming out to go to these events where they just teach them how local government works. And it's actually pretty popular. People actually go out. Now, for me, I'm a journalist. I work in news. I would probably, when someone tells me yeah, Mariah, you want to go hang out and learn how local government works? I'm like, no, I want to go do something fun.
Right.
And that's my job, right? Yeah. But they say that they get free pancakes, they get free breakfast, they have 15 minutes to go socialize, make new friends at the beginning. Then they get to go learn about how local government works. And then they get another 15 minutes to go socialize and make new friends. And it actually works. And what they said was that people are so starved for third spaces, they're down to go not only they're down to go make friends and also learn about how local government works. And that's amazing. So I'm also thinking about that. I think we can consume information in so many different ways. So how can we make information fun and connect to people in a very real way? Like, what's the point of all this information? Like, for me, if I'm in an environmentally stressed area, okay, yeah, I want to know the information. How am I being impacted? How can I keep my kids safe? How can I, keep my community safe? But also, I want to know about the people doing something about it. And then also, there's also like, and I think that's like, like a basic need you have to know. I'm going to go no matter what. But like for things that are a little bit like, more nitty gritty, I feel like you kind of have to add an element of nuance, an element of fun, an element of something.
Yeah.
Got to give the people something.
Hey, I love that because, before we wrap this up, that plays on the fundamental aspects of just humans, like socializing and playing. Like those are two concepts that have just been ingrained for us for ages, and that's like the key to just bringing people together and being able to bring on deeper change.
Yes, food, shelter, and friends.
Yeah. Mariah, thank you so much for making the time to come out onto the Social Primate. For people to catch up with you, to continue following your work, where can people find you?
Oh, yeah. Well, they can follow us at lapublicpress.org. You can follow us on LA Public Press. That's our handle across all channels. If you want to follow me, I don't know why you would want to, but if you did want to, I'm Papaya the Mariah.
Awesome. Well, again, Mariah, thank you so much for making the time. I'm sure this is not going to be the last time we cross ways. And thank you so much again for everything you've been doing.
Thank you so much for having me. It is an honor and it's a privilege. Thank you.
Everybody else, thank you for tuning in. You're listening to KQBH LP, Los Angeles, California, 101.5 FM. And we will see you guys next week.
Scroll infinite, stains in my fingerprint, images imprinting in. All my insecurities are giving in to comparisons I'm sitting with. Watch my brain rot. Artists that are bigger than up on their dividends. It don't matter if it cap or not. Still remind me of everything that I don't got. Watch my brain rot.
Systems designed to divide us, living in a world that rather break us down. But Mother Earth got me grounded. Mountains climbing to the top of the fountain. Tell me, do your neck hurt? Glued to the palm size window, overflowing info. Brain dumb, brain rot. Brain can't never have the down day off. Like, what a world that we living in. Ain't the same when you're looking in. Ain't the same when you're looking in. What a world that we living in. Ain't the same when you're looking in. Ain't the same when you're looking in.
Watch my brain rot. Pixelated violence. Far removed from my little room, I watch the post-bomb smoke rising. I have work in a few. A date tonight, a friend's birthday. Me and my brother in a fight. My empathy dwindles down to a share. I ain't got the time, no. Watch my brain rot. Like, damn, they bad, man, she thick. How we get them six-pack abs he ripped. Wish I could be him with her. They won't love me with the body that I have now. Questioning all the ones that I have round. Cause no one look as good as the ones in my hand. Goddamn, yeah. Watch my brain rot.
What a world that we living in. Ain't the same when you're looking in. Ain't the same when you're looking in. What a world that we